Good evening, night owls, and welcome to Whisper Crowley. Tonight, I will guide you into a world of darkness, hoping to help you relax and unwind. Perhaps some of you will even drift into a haunting yet soothing sleep. Before we begin, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And now we begin. What if it's not just in your head? The question lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. I stood at the edge of the crime scene, the chill of early morning wrapping around me like a shroud. The sun had barely risen, its light weak and uncertain. Shadows clung to the trees, stretching and twisting in ways that felt wrong. Detective Alex Mercer was not a man who typically let doubt creep into his mind. But today, something was different. Perhaps it was the whispers of the past that haunted him, or the trauma he had tried to bury deep within. The case before him was unsettling, the kind that gnawed at the edges of reason. It was his first major investigation since the incident, a horrific event that left scars deeper than any physical wound. As he surveyed the area, his keen eyes caught sight of something unusual. Footprints, but they weren't like any he had seen before. They were large, almost animalistic, and their depth suggested a weight that felt impossible. It was as if the earth itself had exhaled a secret. Alex took a step closer, drawn by a mixture of curiosity and dread. A strange sound broke through the quiet, a rustle in the underbrush that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. It was a fleeting noise, but it felt deliberate, as if something or someone was lurking just out of sight. He shook his head, dismissing the thought. "Get a grip," he muttered under his breath. But the echo of his words only amplified the growing tension within him. His mind wandered back to the night of the incident, the flashes of panic, the feeling of being watched. Each moment felt like a piece of a puzzle he couldn't quite fit together. The echoes of that night were still fresh, a constant reminder of the darkness that dwelled just beyond the edge of his perception. The landscape around him was familiar. This was his hometown, a place where he had walked these very trails since childhood. Yet today every tree felt ominous, every shadow seemed to writhe with life. Alex inhaled sharply, the air thick with a peculiar scent, like damp earth mixed with something metallic. It set his nerves on edge, a reminder that this was no ordinary case. "Stay focused," he reminded himself. He pulled out his notepad, trying to capture the details of the scene, forcing his mind back to the task at hand. But the more he wrote, the more the feeling of being watched intensified. Was it just his imagination, or was there truly something there, hidden behind the veil of normalcy? Then he heard it again, a low growl, almost indistinguishable from the sound of rustling leaves. His heart raced as he turned slowly, scanning the tree line for any sign of movement. Nothing, just the trees swaying gently, as if mocking his paranoia. "Get a grip," he repeated, but the words felt hollow. As he turned back to the crime scene, the shadows seemed to shift, deeper and darker. A chill ran down his spine, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. The day wore on, each hour stretching into an eternity. As the sun climbed higher, the shadows receded slightly, but the unease in his gut remained. The footprints were still there, leading into the woods, a path that felt both inviting and dangerous. They beckoned to him, a siren's call laced with foreboding. He took a deep breath, glancing back at the scene, then made his decision. I need to follow these trails, he thought, the compulsion growing stronger. What could he uncover? What hidden truths lay buried beneath the surface? With each step he took, the noise of the world faded, replaced by a deafening silence that seemed to swallow him whole. As he ventured deeper, the trees loomed taller, their branches twisting like gnarled fingers. The air grew heavy, thick with anticipation. He could feel it now, that unsettling sensation of being watched. His pulse quickened and every sound became amplified, the snap of a twig, the flutter of leaves. Was it just the wind, or was something else moving in the shadows? With every step, he wrestled with his mind. It's just paranoia, he told himself. You're a detective. You can handle this, yet the shadows danced at the corners of his vision, pulling him deeper into the unknown. Suddenly he froze. A flicker of movement caught his eye just beyond the tree line. His breath hitched in his throat. There it was again, a glimpse of something darting just out of reach. The growl returned, closer now, more menacing. He could feel the weight of its gaze upon him, a tangible force that threatened to unravel everything he thought he knew. Turn back, a voice whispered in his mind, but curiosity and fear held him captive. As he took another step, the ground beneath him shifted, and a sense of impending doom washed over him. What awaited him at the end of this trail? Would he find answers or only more questions? The unknown loomed ahead, a dark abyss he was both drawn to and terrified of. And as the shadows lengthened, he took a deep breath and stepped forward, plunging into the depths of uncertainty, unaware of the horrors that lay in wait. The deeper I went, the more the world around me transformed. The familiar woods of my childhood began to twist into something sinister. The sunlight that had once filtered through the leaves now struggled to pierce the thick canopy, leaving the ground shrouded in half-light. Every step felt heavy, weighed down by an invisible force. The growl echoed again, low and threatening. It reverberated through the trees, sending a shiver down my spine. I paused, heart pounding, straining to catch a glimpse of whatever was lurking just out of sight. The shadows danced between the trunks, shifting with an unsettling fluidity. I could feel my pulse thrumming in my ears, each beat a reminder of my vulnerability. The path I followed became less defined, the underbrush thickening around me. Twisted roots jutted out like gnarled fingers, reaching for my ankles, eager to pull me down into the depths of this dark place. I fought the urge to turn back. Curiosity and dread wrestled for control in my mind. What lay ahead? Would I find the answers I sought, or would I unearth something far more terrifying? As I pressed on, the sounds of the forest transformed. The usual chatter of birds was absent, replaced by a heavy silence that seemed almost alive. It felt as though the very air was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I tried to shake off the feeling, focusing instead on the footprints ahead. They were deeper now, more pronounced, leading me further into the unknown. Suddenly I stumbled upon a clearing. My heart sank as I took in the scene before me. Scattered around were remnants of something dreadful, torn clothing, broken branches, and what looked disturbingly like bloodstains on the ground. My stomach twisted at the sight, and the reality of the situation crashed down on me. This wasn't just a simple investigation, it was a descent into madness. I crouched low, examining the stains. The deep red had already begun to darken, congealing against the earth. I could almost hear the echoes of what had transpired here, the whispers of lost souls trapped in this nightmare. My hands trembled as I reached out, brushing against a piece of fabric. It was torn and frayed, but there was no mistaking it. This was evidence, and it told a story of terror. A movement caught my eye, and I whipped around, heart racing. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the trees. It was cloaked in shadows, indistinct yet imposing. I strained to see, but the more I looked, the more it seemed to blend into the darkness. The growl returned, deeper this time, vibrating in my bones. "Show yourself," I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. But the figure remained still, as if gauging my resolve. I could feel the weight of its gaze, a palpable force that made every nerve in my body scream for escape. Then, as if answering my call, the figure stepped forward into a shaft of pale light. What I saw sent a jolt of pure terror through me. It was human, yet not a grotesque fusion of man and beast. Its eyes glowed with a predatory hunger, and its mouth twisted into a snarl that revealed sharp, jagged teeth. I staggered back, adrenaline surging through my veins. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. "What do you want?" I gasped, heart racing. The creature advanced, moving with an unnatural grace that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. As it drew closer, I could see the scars that marred its skin, reminders of a violent past. I realized then that this was no ordinary threat. This was a manifestation of the darkness I had been chasing, a nightmare made flesh. Suddenly a sharp sound sliced through the tension, a crack of a branch underfoot. I spun around to see a second figure emerging from the shadows, another twisted creature, equally fearsome. Panic surged within me, and I turned back to the first, ready to flee. But it was too late. The clearing was closing in around me. The two figures circled me slowly, their growls intertwining like a dark melody. My breath quickened, the reality of my situation dawning on me. There was nowhere to run. I was trapped in a nightmare of my own making. In a desperate attempt to reclaim some control, I reached for my phone, fumbling for the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the grotesque faces before me. They recoiled slightly, hissing at the light. I took a step back, hoping the brief distraction would buy me time. "Leave me alone," I shouted, voice cracking with fear. But my words felt insignificant against the weight of the moment. The creatures didn't seem to understand. They were drawn to me, hungry and relentless. With no clear plan, I turned and bolted into the trees, adrenaline propelling me forward. I could hear them behind me, the sound of their claws scraping against the earth. The shadows closed in, swallowing the light, each breath heavier than the last. I raced through the underbrush, branches snagging at my clothes, tearing at my skin. Panic flooded my senses. Where was I going? I had no idea. All I knew was that I needed to put distance between myself and the horrors that pursued me. The growls morphed into a cacophony of sound, echoing through the woods. It was chaos, each footfall a reminder that I was being hunted. The familiar path had vanished, replaced by an ever-deepening darkness. I stumbled, nearly losing my footing, but I pressed on, driven by primal instinct. Just as I felt I might be lost forever, a glimmer of light pierced through the foliage ahead. Hope surged within me. I sprinted towards it, the growls fading slightly behind me. As I broke through the trees, I found myself on the edge of a small cliff overlooking a dark, swirling river below. I paused, the sudden drop causing my heart to skip a beat. The river roared, its waters churning with a ferocity that mirrored my own racing thoughts. I turned back, scanning the trees for any sign of my pursuers. The growls were gone, replaced by an eerie silence that hung heavy in the air. Had I escaped? Or was this just a momentary reprieve? As I stood there, the weight of my decision settled upon me. I could either confront the shadows that sought to consume me, or I could leap into the unknown waters below, surrendering to the chaos. The echoes of the past haunted me, and I knew that whatever choice I made would lead me further down a path from which there might be no return. In that moment, I felt the boundaries of reality begin to blur. The forest, the river, the creatures, they were all pieces of a puzzle I was desperate to solve, yet terrified to fully explore. And as the light began to fade, I realized I had to make my choice, one that would forever alter the course of my life. I stood at the edge of the cliff, heart racing, my breath coming in short gasps. Below me, the river churned violently, its dark waters crashing against the rocks with a deafening roar. It felt like the very embodiment of chaos, a swirling void that promised both escape and annihilation. The shadows of the creatures still haunted the periphery of my mind, their growls echoing in the distance, relentless and insatiable. Jump or fight, I whispered to myself, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on my chest. My instincts screamed at me to leap, to take the plunge into the unknown rather than face whatever horrors lurked in the forest behind me. But as I looked down at the raging river, uncertainty clawed at me. What awaited me there? Would I drown in its depths, or could it be a chance for a fresh start? The trees swayed gently in the wind, their branches reaching out as if to pull me back from the precipice. I could almost hear their whispers, a symphony of warnings and enticements. Don't jump, they seemed to say. There's still hope. But hope felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the nightmare that had unfolded. My mind raced with flashes of the creatures, their twisted forms, and those glowing eyes that burned with a hunger I could barely comprehend. They were not just beasts, they were manifestations of my fears, lurking just beyond the veil of reality. As the last remnants of daylight faded, the forest transformed into a labyrinth of shadows. The sounds of the night crept in, an orchestra of rustling leaves, distant animal calls, and the unsettling silence of what lay beneath the surface. I felt exposed, like a moth drawn to the flickering flame of the river below. With a deep breath, I took a step back from the edge, my mind whirling. I needed to think clearly to assess my situation. Panic would only lead to poor choices. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the creatures emerging from the trees, their grotesque forms silhouetted against the last rays of twilight. But there was nothing, just silence. Still, the tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to suffocate. I need to find a way out of this, I thought, forcing myself to focus. The night was alive with possibilities, each moment stretching into infinity. I scanned the area for an alternative route, any sign of a way to escape the clutches of the shadows that stalked me. To my right, a narrow path wound its way down the cliffside, partially obscured by tangled vines and underbrush. My heart skipped a beat. It was risky, but it might lead me to safety. With a determined nod, I turned away from the river and began to navigate the steep descent, careful to avoid slipping on the loose stones that threatened to send me tumbling. The path was treacherous, each step requiring all my focus. My mind replayed the horrifying images of the creatures, urging me to hurry. I could almost feel their breath on my neck, the weight of their hunger closing in. The descent felt like an eternity, the darkness deepening around me. Finally, I reached the bottom, landing on a small, rocky beach along the riverbank. The roar of the water was deafening, a constant reminder of the chaos that could swallow me whole. I crouched low, pressing my back against a large boulder, trying to catch my breath and steady my racing heart. From this vantage point, I could see the river winding away into the darkness, its surface glistening under the faint light of the moon. The water was swift, almost inviting in its tumultuous dance. I could escape, perhaps even find a way to the other side. But what awaited me there? Would I find refuge or plunge deeper into despair? Suddenly a noise broke through my thoughts, a low growl, familiar and haunting. I jerked my head around, scanning the trees lining the riverbank. My breath caught in my throat as I spotted movement. The creatures had followed me. Their eyes glowed in the dark, twin beacons of hunger and malice. They had found me. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet. There was no time to waste. I sprinted along the riverbank, adrenaline fueling my every move. The growls grew louder, echoing against the rocks as they pursued me, relentless and unforgiving. The river rushed beside me, its current strong and menacing. I glanced over my shoulder, catching a glimpse of one of the creatures. Its form was sleek and muscular, moving with an unnatural grace. It was closing the distance between us, and my heart pounded louder with each beat. I had to reach the water. I had to escape. As I ran, my mind raced with possible scenarios. If I leapt into the river, I could be swept away, but perhaps I could evade them long enough to find safety. Or maybe I would succumb to the current, drowning in the very chaos I had tried to escape. A sharp turn in the bank caught my attention. To my left, a narrow gap in the rocks led toward a small cave. It was dark and foreboding, but it was also a potential refuge. I hesitated for a heartbeat, torn between the safety of the cave and the treacherous waters of the river. The sound of the creatures behind me snapped me back to reality. I dove into the cave, heart pounding in my chest as I pressed myself against the cool stone. The growls echoed outside, reverberating through the narrow opening. I could see their silhouettes moving just beyond the threshold, shadows against the moonlit night. I held my breath, praying that they wouldn't notice me. The darkness enveloped me, wrapping around me like a comforting blanket, but I knew it was a false sense of security. The creatures were clever, driven by instincts far more powerful than my own. In the cave, I felt the dampness seeping into my clothes, a reminder of my precarious situation. My mind raced, searching for a way out, a means of escape from this nightmare. I scanned the walls, feeling for any sign of an exit, but the shadows loomed larger than my hope. Then I noticed something, scratches on the stone, remnants of something that had come before me. The marks were deep and jagged, as if a struggle had taken place here. My heart sank. This cave had been a refuge for someone else, but it hadn't saved them. The growls intensified, snapping me back to the present. I could hear their claws scraping against the ground, their breath heavy with anticipation. They were just outside, waiting for me to make a sound. The weight of their presence was suffocating, an oppressive force that threatened to crush me. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. I had to think. I couldn't let fear consume me. As I listened to the growls grow fainter, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Perhaps the cave could hide me long enough for the creatures to lose interest. But would it be enough? In the darkness, I closed my eyes, allowing my senses to heighten. The sound of the river rushed beside me, a constant reminder of the chaos beyond. I could feel the pulse of the earth beneath me, a living thing that understood my plight. I needed to find a way to reclaim my life, to confront the shadows that haunted me. And in that moment of stillness, as the growls faded into the distance, I knew one thing. I had to face the darkness, not just the creatures outside, but the fears and traumas that had brought me here. I had to confront the unknown, and only then could I hope to find my way back to the light. Silence enveloped the cave like a thick fog, wrapping around me, muffling the sounds of the world outside. I pressed my back against the cool stone wall, heart hammering in my chest. The growls had receded, but I knew they were still out there, lurking just beyond the threshold, biding their time. Each moment felt like an eternity, every breath a reminder of my vulnerability. I took a deep breath, the damp air filling my lungs with the earthy scent of moss and stone. It was both a comfort and a curse. Here I was hidden, but the darkness felt suffocating, an entity of its own pressing against me. I needed to reclaim my courage. I needed a plan. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my phone, praying that the flashlight still worked. A beam of light pierced the darkness, illuminating the cave's interior. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, and the ground was littered with stones and debris. My eyes darted around, searching for anything that could serve as a weapon or a means of escape. As I swept the light around, I caught sight of a small opening in the rock face, just large enough for me to crawl through. It was partially obscured by a tangle of vines and mud, but it beckoned to me, a glimmer of hope in this hellish landscape. My heart raced at the prospect of finding another way out, away from the danger lurking behind me. I edged closer, the beam of my flashlight revealing more of the cave's depths. The air felt charged with energy, as if the walls were alive, pulsating with the memories of those who had sought refuge here before me. The scratches I had noticed earlier were more numerous than I had thought. I shivered at the thought of what might have transpired in this dark place. The opening in the rock was my only chance. I crouched low, carefully navigating the uneven ground. As I approached the gap, I could feel the damp air flowing from it, carrying with it an unsettling scent, a mix of earth, decay, and something metallic. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to turn back, but I couldn't. The creatures would be back any moment. I squeezed through the narrow passage, the jagged edges of the rock scraping against my arms. The opening widened on the other side, and I found myself in a larger chamber. The light from my phone danced against the walls, revealing glistening minerals embedded in the stone. It was beautiful yet eerie, a stark reminder of the beauty hidden within darkness. Suddenly a low growl echoed from behind me, sharper and more menacing than before. My heart dropped as I realized the creatures had found me again. Panic surged through me, fueling my desperation. I needed to move, and fast. I scanned the new chamber, searching for an exit. My eyes landed on a dark passageway to the left, just beyond a cluster of stalagmites. Without thinking, I bolted toward it, the sound of claws scraping against stone urging me forward. The adrenaline coursed through my veins, propelling me into the depths of the cave. The passage was narrow and winding, twisting like a serpent. I squeezed through tight spaces, my body scraping against the rough walls. Every step felt like a race against time, the echoes of growls growing louder behind me. I could feel their presence, the weight of their hunger pushing me forward. As I sprinted through the passage, I stumbled upon a larger cavern. My flashlight illuminated the vast space, revealing ancient carvings on the walls, symbols and markings that hinted at a long-lost civilization. They told a story, one of rituals and darkness, of sacrifices made to appease the very creatures that hunted me now. My breath caught in my throat as I took in the scene. The realization struck me like a thunderclap. I wasn't just facing my own fears. I had stumbled into a place where nightmares were born. The creatures were not merely beasts. They were part of this ancient horror, remnants of a time when darkness ruled the land. A flicker of movement caught my eye, and I turned just in time to see one of the creatures slip into the cavern. It paused, sniffing the air, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. My heart raced as I pressed myself against the wall, desperate to remain unseen. The otherworldly aura around it pulsed, filling the space with an oppressive energy. It was then that I noticed something glimmering at the far end of the cavern, a stone altar, worn and weathered, covered in moss. There was a faint light emanating from it, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. Could it be a means of escape? A way to confront the darkness? The creature began to advance, its gaze fixed on me. There was no time to think. I dashed toward the altar, each step a frantic plea for survival. The ground beneath me felt alive, vibrating with energy as if it were urging me forward. I could hear the creature's growls escalating, a chorus of fury and hunger. As I reached the altar, I found myself standing before a pedestal adorned with intricate carvings. At its center lay a small, polished stone, a dark gem that shimmered with an inner light. I felt an inexplicable pull toward it, a connection that transcended fear. Without thinking, I grasped the stone, its surface cool and smooth against my palm. The moment I touched it, a surge of energy coursed through me, filling me with warmth and clarity. The creature hesitated, its growls fading to an eerie silence. It seemed almost afraid. I could feel the power of the gem resonating with my own fear, transforming it into something tangible. I faced the creature, my heart racing but my resolve strengthening. "Stay back," I shouted, my voice echoing through the cavern. I didn't know what I was doing, but I felt a surge of confidence. The creature paused, its glowing eyes widening. It seemed to sense the change in the air, the shift in power. For a moment we were locked in a silent standoff, predator and prey. I could feel the ancient energy coursing through me, a bond forged in desperation and defiance. But the standoff didn't last. The creature lunged, a blur of movement and fury. I raised the stone instinctively, feeling its warmth radiate through my body. A beam of light shot forth, enveloping the creature in a blinding glow. It let out a howl, stumbling back, the light pushing it away. I didn't stop to think. I sprinted toward the exit of the cavern, the stone still clutched tightly in my hand. The light illuminated the path ahead, guiding me through the darkness. The growls of the other creatures echoed behind me, but I pressed on, fueled by the raw energy of survival. I burst through another passage, the cave's air freshening as I emerged into the night. I found myself standing on a rocky ledge overlooking the river, the moonlight reflecting off the water like silver shards. The world outside was alive with sound, the rustling of leaves, the croaking of frogs, the distant howl of wind. But there was no time to pause. I could feel the creatures closing in behind me, their presence like a dark cloud. I needed to escape, to put as much distance as possible between us. I took a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs, and jumped down onto the bank. The water roared beneath me, inviting and terrifying. I hesitated for only a moment before plunging into the river, the cold water enveloping me like a shroud. I fought against the current, using every ounce of strength I had left. The chill bit at my skin, but I pushed forward, propelled by the instinct to survive. As I swam, I could feel the weight of the darkness receding, the light from the stone still warm in my hand. I emerged from the water, gasping for breath, my heart pounding with adrenaline. I turned to look back at the riverbank where the shadows loomed ominously, but they hesitated, as if held at bay by the light of the gem. I pulled myself onto the rocky shore, drenched and shivering, but alive. The path ahead was unclear, but I knew I had to keep moving. I glanced at the stone in my hand, its glow dimming but still present. It was a reminder of what I had faced and what lay ahead. As I set off into the night, the weight of the past still clung to me, but I felt a flicker of hope. I had confronted the darkness, and though the path was fraught with uncertainty, I was determined to find my way back to the light. The journey was far from over, but I was no longer just a victim of my fears. I was a survivor, and I would fight to reclaim my life. The night wrapped around me like a heavy cloak, the sounds of the river fading behind as I trudged deeper into the dark forest. Each step felt both exhilarating and terrifying, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I was no longer just fleeing, I was searching for answers, for clarity, for a way to escape the shadows that had threatened to consume me. The stone glowed softly in my palm, casting a faint light that illuminated my path. Its warmth was a comfort, a reminder of the power I had tapped into, but it also carried an ominous weight. What had I awakened within myself? The creatures were still out there, and I had only delayed the inevitable confrontation. As I moved through the trees, the forest felt alive, pulsing with unseen energy. The moon hung low in the sky, filtering through the branches, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. I could hear the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of night creatures, but there was something else, a whispering breeze that seemed to carry voices from the depths of the darkness. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog of fear and uncertainty. I needed to focus. My mind drifted back to the markings I had seen in the cavern, the ancient symbols that hinted at rituals, at sacrifices. What were they trying to communicate? Was there a way to understand what I had stumbled upon? The thought sent a chill down my spine. I stopped, glancing around as shadows flickered at the edges of my vision. The creatures could still be nearby, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I quickened my pace, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot the only sound in the suffocating silence. The further I ventured into the forest, the more the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavier, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying foliage. It was unsettling, as if the forest itself was breathing, alive with secrets hidden just beneath the surface. I felt an inexplicable pull, a longing to uncover the truth of this place. After what felt like hours of wandering, I stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight. At its center stood a massive, gnarled tree, its trunk twisted and knotted with age. It seemed to pulse with a life of its own, roots sprawling like fingers into the earth. I approached cautiously, captivated by its presence. There was something ancient about it, something that resonated deep within me. As I stepped closer, I noticed faint carvings etched into the bark, mirroring the symbols I had seen in the cave. I reached out, fingertips brushing against the rough surface. A jolt of energy shot through me, sending a shiver down my spine. It was as if the tree recognized me, as if it held the memories of those who had come before. "What do you want from me?" I whispered into the night, the words escaping my lips before I could stop them. The wind seemed to answer, swirling around me, carrying the scents of the forest, the earthy smell of moss, the sweetness of blooming flowers, and the sharp tang of something metallic. Suddenly the ground trembled beneath my feet, and the air crackled with energy. I stumbled back, heart racing, as the tree began to glow. The carvings lit up in a brilliant display, each symbol shining like a beacon in the darkness. I shielded my eyes, trying to comprehend what was happening. Then, without warning, the glow intensified, illuminating the entire clearing. I felt a surge of power, a connection that tethered me to the earth and the sky. Memories flooded my mind, visions of ancient rituals, people gathering around this very tree, their faces filled with hope and fear. They were seeking something, a balance between light and darkness. The ground shook again, and I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. The light from the tree enveloped me, swirling around like a protective cocoon. I could hear whispers, urgent and insistent, urging me to listen, to understand. "Embrace the darkness to find the light," a voice echoed in my mind, resonating with an ancient wisdom that felt familiar yet foreign. "You are the key. Only you can bridge the worlds." I gasped, the realization hitting me like a tidal wave. I had been chosen, thrust into a battle that transcended my own fears. This was not just about survival. It was about restoring balance, about confronting the darkness that had plagued this land for centuries. But how? The question lingered in the air, heavy and foreboding. I needed guidance, a way to harness the energy of the tree and the power of the stone. The connection was there, but I was still unprepared. I had faced the creatures, but their true nature remained shrouded in mystery. With newfound determination, I rose to my feet, grounding myself in the energy swirling around me. I had to act to harness the power of the tree and the stone. Perhaps together they could help me confront the creatures and uncover the truth of this darkness. I closed my eyes, focusing on the sensation of the stone in my hand. Its warmth radiated through me, merging with the energy of the tree. I felt the pull of the forest, the heartbeat of the earth beneath my feet. As I embraced it, visions swirled in my mind, images of the creatures, their twisted forms now illuminated by the truth of their existence. They were not mere monsters. They were the manifestation of fear, of isolation, of the darkness that had seeped into the very fabric of the world. I realized that in order to confront them, I had to confront my own fears. I had to embrace the darkness within me to find the strength to fight back. With that realization came a surge of confidence. I opened my eyes, the light of the tree blazing brighter than ever. I stepped forward, ready to embrace my fate. The clearing around me began to shift, the air thickening with energy as I prepared to summon the strength I needed. But then a chilling sound broke through the stillness, a low, menacing growl echoing from the tree line. My heart sank. They had come for me. I turned, the light from the tree flickering in response to the threat. The shadows emerged, the creatures slinking forward, their glowing eyes fixed on me with an insatiable hunger. They were more than before, drawn by the energy of the tree, their presence more palpable than ever. I clenched the stone, its warmth infusing me with resolve. The whispers of the forest grew louder, urging me to stand my ground. You are the bridge, they echoed. Embrace your power. With a deep breath, I faced the oncoming horde, feeling the energy of the tree surge within me. The light pulsed, casting away the shadows as I stood tall, ready to confront the darkness that had plagued me for so long. The creatures advanced, but this time I was no longer just a victim. I was a force to be reckoned with, a beacon of light in the depths of despair. I raised the stone, the glow intensifying as I shouted, I will not let you take me. I will stand against you. The ground shook again and the creatures halted, confusion flashing in their eyes. I felt the power of the tree merge with my own, creating a barrier of light that pulsed with each beat of my heart. I was ready to fight back, ready to reclaim my life and confront the darkness that sought to consume me. With that determination ignited, I charged forward, ready to embrace the unknown and face whatever lay ahead. This was my moment. I would not falter. I would not back down. The battle for my soul and the soul of the forest had just begun. I hope you enjoyed the first story. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, but if I didn't do my job well, feel free to give it a thumbs down. Either way, drop a comment and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, let's continue. The question echoed in my mind as I stood on the rain-soaked pavement of Gray Street. The neon lights of the city flickered ominously in the damp night air. I glanced around, the familiar sights now twisted by shadows and the patter of rain. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, a reminder that darkness loomed, not just in the alleys, but within the hearts of those who walked these streets. My name is Alex Mercer. Once a promising journalist, I had been thrust into the world of crime reporting after a personal tragedy that left me haunted and restless. The loss of my younger brother, Danny, in a hit-and-run accident had ignited a fire within me. I was determined to seek justice, not just for him, but for those silenced by the very systems meant to protect them. As I stood there, a shiver ran down my spine. The air felt charged, as if the city itself was holding its breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I wrapped my coat tighter around me, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the slick pavement. I had spent the past few weeks investigating a string of suspicious deaths, that seemed to ripple through the fabric of the city, a network of corruption and hidden agendas. Each victim had connections to a powerful real estate mogul, Malcolm Voss, whose empire was built on secrets and lies. Tonight, I was meeting with an informant who claimed to have critical information about the case. The anticipation gnawed at me. Would this lead me closer to the truth, or would it plunge me deeper into danger? As I approached the designated meeting spot, a dimly lit cafe nestled between two towering buildings, I heard a strange rustling sound. My heart raced as I turned, scanning the shadows. Nothing, just the wind whispering through the alley. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the growing unease. Inside the cafe, the atmosphere was heavy, with the smell of burnt coffee and stale pastries. I chose a secluded table at the back, my eyes darting around for any sign of my contact. The soft murmur of conversations blended with the clinking of cups, but something felt off. I sensed a tension in the air, an underlying current of anxiety that sent a chill down my spine. Minutes passed. I checked my watch, impatience creeping in. Where was he? Suddenly the door creaked open and a figure stepped inside. My breath caught in my throat. It was a man dressed in a dark coat, his face partially obscured by the brim of a hat. He scanned the room, and for a fleeting moment our eyes locked. There was a familiarity in his gaze, but I couldn't place it. He approached my table, sliding into the seat opposite me without a word. "You're Alex Mercer," he stated, his voice low and gravelly. "Who are you?" I asked, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I have information about Voss. It's bigger than you think." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, a loud crash echoed from the street outside. Glass shattered and the cafe fell silent. My heart raced as I glanced out the window. A black SUV had collided with a lamppost, smoke billowing from the front. Instinctively, I felt the weight of danger pressing in. "Stay here," I whispered to the man. I had to see what was happening. I pushed through the door, the rain now pouring down in sheets. The scene was chaotic. People rushed towards the SUV, shouting. I could see two figures stumbling from the vehicle, bloodied and disoriented. Adrenaline surged through me as I moved closer, scanning for threats. That's when I heard it, a faint, chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. A low growl emanating from the alley beside the cafe. I turned, heart pounding. The shadows shifted, and I caught a glimpse of something dark and menacing lurking just out of sight. Was it my imagination, or was something truly there? I hesitated, torn between the chaos in front of me and the ominous presence behind. Suddenly, the growl escalated into a snarl, and a figure lunged from the shadows. My instincts kicked in. I dove back, narrowly avoiding the rush of dark energy that surged past me. The creature, if it could even be called that, was a twisted form of sinew and shadow, its eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. "Get back," I shouted, adrenaline surging as I scrambled to my feet. People around me began to scream, panic erupting. The creature was quick, darting toward the crowd, its movements fluid and terrifying. I needed to act fast. I grabbed a nearby trash can lid, wielding it like a shield, trying to position myself between the creature and the nearest group of people. My heart pounded in my ears. What the hell is happening? I muttered, my thoughts racing. This was no ordinary night. The creature stopped, its attention focused on me. It let out a low, rumbling growl, eyes narrowing. I took a step back, glancing around for an escape route. With a sudden burst of courage, I shouted, "Get to safety." Now, as I swung the trash lid in a wide arc, trying to distract it. The monster lunged again, but this time I was ready. I sidestepped, adrenaline propelling me forward. It crashed into the ground, momentarily dazed. I seized the opportunity and bolted back toward the cafe, the chaos behind me echoing in my ears. Inside, the informant had vanished, leaving nothing but a lingering tension in the air. I felt the weight of the unanswered questions pressing down on me. I had stumbled into something dark, and now the shadows were closing in. As I turned to leave, the growl returned, a chilling reminder of the threat that lurked in the depths of the city. I had survived, but at what cost? I stepped out into the stormy night, determined to uncover the truth, no matter where it led me. The city was filled with darkness, and I was only beginning to unravel its secrets. The rain continued to pour as I stepped back onto the slick pavement, my heart racing and adrenaline still coursing through my veins. The screams from the cafe echoed in my mind, mingling with the growl of the creature that had chased me. What had I just witnessed? This wasn't just a simple case of corruption and murder anymore. There were forces at play that I had only begun to understand, and they were far darker than I could have imagined. I stumbled away from the chaos, my breath coming in quick gasps. The city around me felt like a labyrinth of shadows, each alley and corner cloaked in an air of foreboding. I needed to regroup to make sense of what had happened. My mind raced back to the informant. He had been my only light, and now he was gone. I had to find him. As I made my way down Gray Street, I could still hear the faint sounds of chaos behind me, the distant sirens, the shouts of onlookers, the lingering sense of fear. I ducked into a narrow alley, seeking shelter from the rain, my heart pounding against my ribcage. I leaned against the cold brick wall, trying to calm my racing thoughts. What did Voss have to do with all of this? My instincts told me that he was at the center of the web I was trying to untangle. I had seen the way he moved through the city, a puppet master pulling the strings of unsuspecting victims. But what kind of power did he wield? And what had I stumbled into? I took a deep breath, willing myself to focus. I pulled out my phone, fingers shaking as I typed in the name of the informant I had met. Ben Carson. I needed to find him. The screen illuminated my face, casting an eerie glow in the darkness. I scrolled through my contacts, desperately hoping to find someone who could help. I clicked on Jenna, a fellow journalist who had connections within the police department. She had always been my lifeline, someone who could provide me with information that could pierce through the layers of secrecy. I pressed the call button, the ringing echoing in the silence of the alley. "Alex, is everything okay?" Her voice was laced with concern. "Jenna, I need your help. Something gone terribly wrong. I was meeting an informant about the Voss case, and..." "Are you safe?" "Where are you?" she interrupted, her tone shifting to urgency. "I'm fine for now, but there was an incident. A creature. Something attacked outside the cafe." I lost my informant. The words tumbled out, fueled by fear and desperation. What do you mean, a creature? Are you sure you're not just? I know how it sounds, but I swear I'm not imagining this. I think it's connected to Voss, and I need to find Ben before he disappears too. There was a pause on the other end. All right, meet me at the usual place. I can pull some strings, see if anyone has reported anything unusual. But be careful, Alex. If Voss is involved, you might not be safe. I nodded, even though she couldn't say me. I will. Thanks, Jenna. I ended the call and took a moment to collect my thoughts. The usual cafe was just a few blocks away, a place where I had shared countless cups of coffee with Jenna while discussing the city's secrets. I had to get there fast, but I needed to stay vigilant. As I stepped back into the rain, the chill seeped into my bones. The shadows danced at the edges of my vision, and I could swear I heard whispers, low, ominous murmurs that seemed to call my name. I shook my head, trying to clear the paranoia. It was the darkness playing tricks on me, I told myself. I pushed forward, quickening my pace. The city felt alive, every corner echoing with the pulse of its secrets. I passed familiar landmarks, old buildings with cracked facades, flickering streetlights that barely held back the night. I turned down another alley, my instincts heightened. Suddenly, a noise shattered the silence behind me. The sound of footsteps, deliberate and heavy, echoed off the walls. I spun around, heart racing. My breath hitched as I strained to see through the darkness. Was it just my imagination, or was someone following me? I pressed against the cold wall, heart pounding in my chest. The footsteps grew louder, more insistent. I glanced around, searching for an escape route. The alley seemed to narrow, closing in on me. And then I saw him, a figure emerging from the shadows. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat that flapped in the wind. My pulse quickened. Was this Voss's henchman? Had they caught up to me already? I stepped back, ready to bolt, when the man called out, "Alex." Wait. I froze, recognizing the voice. It was Ben. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of urgency. Ben, you need to get out of here. It's not safe, I urged, glancing back down the alley, half expecting the creature to emerge. I know, he panted, clearly out of breath. I saw what happened. I barely escaped. They're coming for you, Alex. Voss knows you're digging too deep. What do you mean? I felt a chill run down my spine. What did you find out? He glanced around, paranoia etched on his face. I uncovered something big, something that ties Voss to the deaths. But I don't have all the details. I was going to meet you, but I got caught up. Before he could finish, the growl erupted from the shadows again, louder and more menacing this time. My heart sank. Run, I shouted, grabbing Ben's arm and pulling him back toward the entrance of the alley. The creature's form emerged, its twisted body illuminated by the dim street light, eyes glinting with predatory hunger. We sprinted down the street, adrenaline fueling our escape. The rain poured down, soaking us as we turned corner after corner, desperate to put distance between ourselves and the horror chasing us. Where do we go? Ben shouted, panic rising in his voice. To the cafe. Jenna will help us, I replied, not knowing if it was even safe there. We dashed across the intersection, weaving through the night as the growl echoed behind us. The creature was relentless, gaining ground with each passing moment. I could feel its presence closing in, an embodiment of the very darkness I had been seeking to expose. We finally reached the cafe, bursting through the door just as the growl erupted into a furious roar. I slammed the door behind us, panting as I leaned against it, my heart racing. Jenna was already there, her expression shifting from concern to horror as she took in the sight of us, drenched and breathless. What happened? I heard the noise outside. Lock the door. We're not safe yet, I yelled, glancing back at the windows. Jenna moved quickly, securing the door while I turned to Ben, who was trying to catch his breath. What did you find? We don't have much time. He nodded, his face pale. Voss is involved in something far worse than I imagined. It's a network of corruption. He's been silencing anyone who threatens to expose him. The deaths, they're part of it. But how? Why the creature? I asked, my mind racing to connect the dots. I think it's a distraction, he replied, eyes darting nervously. A way to keep people like us from getting too close to the truth. Voss is powerful, Alex. He has resources that go beyond the law. Jenna returned, her face set with determination. We need to figure out our next move. If Voss knows you're onto him, we're all in danger. I nodded, fear twisting in my gut. But a part of me felt emboldened. I had come too far to back down now. We need to gather evidence. If we can expose him, we might have a chance to bring this whole operation down. Suddenly a loud thud echoed against the door. The creature was outside, relentless in its pursuit. I could hear the scratching of claws against the wood, the growl vibrating through the air like a warning. Jenna looked at us, eyes wide with fear. What do we do? It's going to break in. We fight, I said, clenching my fists. We can't let it in. We need to hold our ground and find a way to turn the tables. As the thuds grew louder, I felt a surge of resolve. We were in this together now. No matter the odds, we would confront the darkness. The creature wasn't just a monster. It was a symbol of the corruption that had seeped into our lives. We would expose the truth no matter the cost. With a determined look, I turned to my friends. Let's end this. The door shuddered violently as the creature outside renewed its assault. The air in the cafe grew thick with tension, every creak of the wood echoing ominously. I could feel my heart pounding in sync with the thuds against the door, the primal fear clawing at the edges of my resolve. Jenna's eyes flicked to the windows, shadows dancing in the flickering light. We need to barricade the door. If it gets in, we're done for, she said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. Ben nodded, shaking off his momentary shock. There's a heavy table in the corner. We can use that. I sprinted to the table, my legs moving on autopilot. Adrenaline surged through me, fueling my movements. As I pushed the table toward the door, I could hear the creature growling, a deep, guttural sound that resonated through the cafe walls. It was close, too close. Jenna joined me, her face pale but determined. Together, we wedged the table against the door just as another powerful thud, sent ripples of fear through me. I could see the door buckle slightly, the wood straining against the force. "Ben, check the back exit," I shouted, my voice cutting through the cacophony. He hesitated for a moment, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on him, but then darted toward the kitchen. Jenna and I stood shoulder to shoulder, bracing against the table. "What the hell is that thing?" she gasped, her breath coming in quick bursts. "I don't know, but it's connected to Voss somehow. He's using it to scare people into silence, to protect his empire." My mind raced as I pieced together the fragments of information we had. If we can survive this, we need to find out what Voss is hiding. Just then, the back door swung open with a loud bang. Ben stumbled into the room, wide-eyed and panting. "There's another way out. But we need to move now." I looked at Jenna, a mix of fear and determination in our eyes. "Or should we take the chance? The alternative is standing here and waiting to get eaten," she said bluntly, glancing at the door which was beginning to splinter. "All right," I said, adrenaline fueling my decision. "Let's go." We hurried toward the back, pushing through the kitchen doors. The scent of grease and burnt coffee hung heavy in the air, mixing with the metallic tang of fear. As we moved, the growling intensified, vibrating in my bones. We needed to hurry. We squeezed through the narrow passageway, the dim lights flickering above us. I could hear the sounds of the cafe fading behind us, replaced by the distant roar of the city outside. It was strangely comforting, a reminder that life continued, even as we faced our nightmare. "Where does this lead?" Ben asked, glancing over his shoulder as we moved. "To the alley behind the cafe," I replied. "If we can get out, we might be able to lose it in the streets." We reached a door at the end of the hallway. I pushed it open and we tumbled out into the alley, rain pouring down around us like a curtain of icy water. The cold hit me like a shock, grounding me for a moment. I took a deep breath, the fresh air filling my lungs. But the moment of relief was short-lived. The growl erupted behind us, louder and more furious than before. The creature had followed us. I could feel the vibrations in the ground as it barreled down the alleyway, its footsteps heavy and deliberate. "We need to split up," I said, urgency lacing my voice. "It's our only chance." "Are you crazy?" Ben exclaimed, his eyes wide with fear. "It'll pick us off one by one. We can't stay together. If we do, it'll catch all of us." "We need to confuse it," I argued, my mind racing. "Jenna, you go left. Ben, you take right. I'll draw it away. We meet back at the cafe." They exchanged glances, the weight of the decision hanging heavily in the air. Finally, Jenna nodded. "Fine, but you need to be careful, Alex." "I will," I promised, though my heart was heavy with doubt. I turned, ready to face the creature head-on. "On 3, I said, counting down. 1, 2, 3. We split in different directions, the rain soaking through my clothes as I sprinted down the alley. I could hear the creature's growls echoing behind me, each sound sending a jolt of fear through my veins. I ran as fast as I could, my mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. I turned a corner, trying to lose it in the maze of streets. I could feel its presence, like a shadow creeping closer. I needed to think fast. I spotted a dumpster ahead and ducked behind it, pressing my back against the cold metal, trying to steady my breath. From my hiding spot, I watched as the creature rounded the corner, its form illuminated by a flickering streetlight. It was massive, a twisted amalgamation of fur and bone, its eyes glowing with a feral intensity. The sight sent a shiver down my spine. It paused, sniffing the air, its nostrils flaring as it searched for my scent. I held my breath, praying it wouldn't find me. I could hear the rain pattering against the ground, a steady rhythm that somehow felt like a countdown. Then unexpectedly, it turned and dashed down another alley. My heart raced. Had I lost it? Or was it merely playing with me? I waited a few moments, letting the silence wrap around me like a blanket before cautiously peeking out from behind the dumpster. The street was empty, the echo of my heart the only sound breaking the stillness. I took a moment to collect myself, my mind spinning with thoughts of Jenna and Ben. Were they safe? Had they managed to evade the creature? I forced myself to move, slipping out from my hiding spot and heading back toward the cafe. The streets felt different now, charged with a sense of urgency. I could hear distant sirens and the hum of the city, but everything felt muted, like I was submerged underwater. As I approached the cafe, my heart sank. The front door stood ajar, swinging slightly in the wind. Had they made it back? Or had the creature found them? I stepped inside cautiously, my breath hitching as I took in the scene. The cafe was dark, the only light coming from the flickering street lamp outside. Tables lay overturned, chairs scattered across the floor, a testament to the chaos that had unfolded. Jenna. Ben, I called, my voice echoing in the silence. No response. I felt a chill creep down my spine, dread pooling in my stomach. I moved deeper into the cafe, scanning the room for any sign of them. The tension in the air was palpable, a heavy blanket of uncertainty wrapping around me. Then I heard it, a faint noise coming from the kitchen. My heart raced as I approached, each step deliberate and cautious. I pushed the door open, the hinges creaking ominously. The kitchen was dimly lit, shadows dancing along the walls. My eyes darted around, searching for any sign of my friends. And then I saw her, Jenna, huddled on the floor, her face pale and drawn. Jenna, I rushed to her side, relief flooding through me. Are you okay? Where's Ben? She looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear. He's not here. I thought he was with you. Panic gripped my chest. What do you mean? He left before I did. He never made it back, she whispered, trembling. I was hiding, and I thought I heard him call out. But when I went to look, he was gone. A wave of despair washed over me. We had to find him. We need to look for him. He could be in trouble. But what if the creature comes back? Jenna's voice quivered with fear. We can't leave him behind, I said firmly, trying to quell the rising dread within me. We have to try. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the front of the cafe, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps. The creature was back. Hide, I hissed, pulling Jenna behind a nearby counter. We crouched low, our hearts pounding in unison, as we listened to the chaos unfolding just outside. The door burst open and the creature charged in, its growl reverberating off the walls. I could see its shadow moving, a hulking mass of terror. It was hunting us, and there was no escape. I glanced at Jenna, her eyes wide with fear. We had to act fast. I reached for a nearby pot, gripping it tightly in my hand. It wouldn't do much against the creature, but it was better than nothing. The creature paused, sniffing the air as if sensing our presence. I could see its eyes glowing in the darkness, scanning the room. It was a predator, and we were its prey. We held our breath, waiting for the moment to strike. The growl grew louder, closer, and I knew we didn't have much time. Suddenly it lunged forward, and instinct kicked in. "Now," I shouted, springing from my hiding spot and swinging the pot at the creature's head. The clang echoed through the cafe, momentarily stunning it. Jenna followed suit, grabbing a chair and throwing it at the beast. The creature snarled, turning its attention toward us. "Run!" I yelled, and we dashed toward the back exit. The creature was hot on our heels, its growl echoing in the confined space. We burst through the back door into the alley, the rain pouring down in torrents. I could feel the creature's breath on my neck, its growls vibrating in my bones. "We need to find Ben," I shouted, but there was no time to think. We sprinted down the alley, desperation fueling our escape. Every shadow felt alive, every sound amplified in the chaos of the storm. The city loomed around us, a maze of darkness and uncertainty. I had no idea where Ben was, but I couldn't leave him behind. As we turned another corner, I caught a glimpse of movement ahead, a figure stumbling through the rain. My heart leaped. Ben. He looked disoriented, drenched and pale, but alive. "Alex, Jenna, over here." We rushed toward him, relief flooding through me. "We thought we lost you," I said, pulling him into a tight embrace. "I got trapped in the alley, but I managed to lose it," he panted, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "We have to get out of here." The creature was still pursuing us, its growl reverberating in the distance. We had to act quickly. "Follow me," I commanded, leading the way down another narrow street. We ran as fast as we could, the rain pounding against us, each drop a reminder of our urgency. "Where do we go now?" Ben asked, glancing around as we navigated the maze of streets. "We need to find a safe place to regroup," I replied, trying to think clearly. "Somewhere we can catch our breath and figure out our next move." Just then I spotted an old building ahead, abandoned and dark, but it looked like it might provide some shelter. "There, let's go." We hurried inside, the door creaking ominously as we closed it behind us. The interior was dimly lit, dust motes dancing in the air. It felt eerie, but it was better than being out in the open. We gathered in a corner, hearts racing as we listened for any signs of the creature. "We need to catch our breath," Jenna said, her voice shaky. "Agreed," I said, trying to steady my breathing. "But we can't stay here long. Voss is out there, and that creature is his weapon." Ben leaned against the wall, his eyes scanning the dark corners. "What do we do next? We can't keep running forever." I took a deep breath, trying to formulate a plan. "We need to gather evidence against Voss. We have to expose him before it's too late." "But how?" Jenna asked, her brow furrowed. "He's powerful. He has connections everywhere. We find out who he's working with," I said, determination hardening in my voice. "If we can uncover the network behind him, we can bring him down." Suddenly, a noise from outside caught my attention. A low growl, the unmistakable sound of the creature. My heart dropped. It's back. We huddled together, adrenaline coursing through our veins. The door rattled, and I could hear the creature scratching at the wood, trying to find a way in. We need to barricade the door, I shouted, rushing toward it. Ben and Jenna followed, and we pushed a nearby table against the entrance, our hearts racing as we worked. The growl intensified, the creature's frustration palpable. "Do you think it can get in?" Ben asked, panic creeping into his voice. "I don't know," I admitted, my heart pounding. "But we have to hold it off long enough to figure out our next move." As the creature's claws scraped against the door, I felt a surge of fear mixed with resolve. We were in this together, and we wouldn't let it win. "We need a plan," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos surrounding us. "If it gets in, we fight back. We can't let Voss's monster take us down." Jenna nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "We're not going to back down. We'll find a way to end this." With that, we stood together, ready to face whatever came next. The creature was relentless, but so were we. And together we would uncover the truth behind Voss and his dark empire, no matter the cost. The door trembled violently as the creature outside renewed its assault. Every thud sent shockwaves through the old building, rattling the table we had hastily barricaded against the entrance. The walls felt like they were closing in, the shadows creeping closer as if the very darkness was alive, watching, waiting. "We can't let it break through," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The adrenaline coursing through me was a double-edged sword, heightening my senses but also sharpening my fear. Jenna's fingers tightened around a broken chair leg she had picked up as a makeshift weapon. "What if it finds another way in?" she asked, her eyes darting to the windows, now shrouded in darkness and rain. "It won't. It's focused on us," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. My heart was a drumbeat of dread, each pulse a reminder of our precarious situation. "We need to stay quiet and think. If it's Voss's creature, there must be a weakness." Ben, leaning against the wall, nodded, his breath heavy with exertion. "What do we know about Voss? He must have something, documents, plans, anything that can help us." I glanced around the dimly lit room. It felt like a tomb, filled with forgotten memories and secrets buried deep. "There might be something here," I said, gesturing to the scattered debris. "This building looks abandoned, but it could hold clues about Voss's operations." As we searched the room, the growling outside became an ominous backdrop, a reminder that time was running out. I rummaged through old crates and dusty boxes, my fingers brushing against the remnants of a past long gone. Each creak of the floorboards beneath my feet echoed like a warning. "Look," Jenna called, her voice rising with excitement. She held up a weathered notebook, its cover cracked and faded. "This looks like it could be important." I hurried over, glancing at the pages filled with hurried scrawls and sketches. "This is definitely Voss's handwriting," I said, flipping through the pages. "It talks about shipments, connections, and something called Project Shade." "What's that?" Ben asked, peering over my shoulder. "It looks like some kind of experimentation," I replied, my brow furrowing as I read. "He's been working on something that involves controlling creatures. This could explain the thing we just encountered." The growl outside intensified, a low rumble that sent a shiver down my spine. "We need to hurry," I said, tucking the notebook under my arm. "If Voss is behind this, we have to find a way to expose him before it's too late." Suddenly the door shuddered violently, a sound that made my stomach drop. The creature was getting more aggressive, its persistence a chilling reminder of our impending doom. "We should look for another exit," Jenna suggested, glancing nervously at the door. "If it breaks through, we won't stand a chance." "Agreed," I replied, my mind racing. "There might be a way to the roof. We can get a better vantage point and figure out our next move." Ben nodded, scanning the room. "There's a staircase in the back. Let's check it out." We moved quickly, the tension palpable as we navigated through the debris. The stairs creaked ominously beneath our feet, each step feeling like a countdown to disaster. I glanced back at Jenna and Ben, their faces set with determination, but I could see the fear lurking beneath the surface. As we reached the top, I pushed open a door that led to the roof. The cold wind whipped around us, the rain drenching us in an instant. The city sprawled below, a maze of flickering lights and shadows, but the sense of safety felt like a distant memory. "We can see if the creature is still out there," I said, my heart racing as I stepped onto the rooftop. "And maybe find a way to get back to the main street." The wind howled around us, a ghostly chorus that sent chills down my spine. I moved to the edge of the building, scanning the alley below. The creature was still prowling, its form a dark silhouette against the wet pavement. I could see its glowing eyes, searching, hunting. "We have to make a plan," I said, turning to Jenna and Ben, who stood close behind me. "We can't just run blindly into the streets. We need to draw it away from here first." "What do you have in mind?" Ben asked, his brow furrowed with concentration. I took a deep breath, piecing together my thoughts. "If we can create a distraction, we might be able to light it away. Maybe set something on fire, something that will draw its attention." Jenna's eyes widened. "You mean like the old dumpster down below? We could light it and use the flames to create a diversion." "Exactly," I said, feeling a surge of hope. "While it's distracted, we make our move." We formulated our plan, adrenaline sharpening our focus as we prepared for the risky endeavor ahead. I grabbed a few scraps of cardboard and paper from the rooftop, assembling a small pile near the edge. The rain continued to pour, but I was determined. "Are you sure this is going to work?" Jenna asked, concern etched on her face. "It has to," I replied. "We don't have many options left." Ben nodded, gathering a few more scraps as I searched my pockets for anything flammable. I found a lighter, a small, flickering flame against the downpour. "This will do," I said, holding it up with determination. Once we had everything ready, we positioned ourselves near the edge of the rooftop, the dumpster visible below. I took a deep breath, my heart racing as I struck the lighter against the cardboard. A flame flickered to life, quickly growing as I dropped it onto the pile. The fire crackled, sending up sparks into the rain-soaked air. Jenna and Ben stepped back, eyes wide as the flames grew. "Now," I shouted, pointing toward the creature below. The growling ceased for a moment as the creature caught sight of the fire. It paused, head cocked to the side, its glowing eyes fixed on the growing inferno. The distraction worked. I could see its primal instincts taking over as it lunged toward the dumpster. "Let's move," I shouted, adrenaline pumping through me as we sprinted toward the edge of the building. We climbed down a nearby fire escape, each metal rung slick with rain, but I didn't care. My focus was singular survival. We landed in the alley just as the creature began to roar, drawn to the flames. The noise echoed in the dark, a testament to the chaos we had unleashed. "Quick this way," Ben urged, leading us toward a side street that would take us away from the fire and the creature. We dashed into the shadows, the sound of the roaring flames fading behind us. As we rounded a corner, I glanced back at the inferno we had created. It was a small victory in the face of our looming terror, but it was enough to spur us on. We needed to get to safety, to gather our thoughts and plan our next move. "We should find a place to hide and figure out what's next," I said, my breath coming in ragged bursts. Jenna nodded, her face pale but resolute. "We need to get our hands on more information about Voss. If we can find out what Project Shade is, we might have a chance." Ben pointed down another narrow alley. "There's an old warehouse not far from here. It's abandoned, but it might give us the cover we need." "Let's go," I said, pushing through the fear that threatened to overwhelm me. We needed to keep moving, keep fighting. We couldn't let Voss win. As we made our way toward the warehouse, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The shadows seemed to stretch and writhe, the darkness alive with unseen threats. When we reached the warehouse, I pushed the door open, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside, the air was stale and heavy with dust. The dim light filtering through cracked windows revealed piles of debris and forgotten machinery, a graveyard of the past. "This place gives me the creeps," Jenna whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "It's perfect for hiding," I replied, scanning the interior for any signs of danger. "We can regroup and figure out our next steps." We moved deeper into the warehouse, finding a secluded corner to catch our breath. I pulled out the notebook we had found earlier, eager to delve into its contents. The pages were filled with Voss's plans, diagrams of creatures, and notes about Project Shade. "There has to be something here that can help us," I muttered, flipping through the pages. "He can't be using these creatures for anything good." Ben leaned over, his brow furrowing as he read. "This is worse than I thought. He's trying to create a controlled army, an army of monsters." Jenna looked at me, concern etched across her face. "If he succeeds, it could mean disaster for the whole city. We have to stop him." I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on my shoulders. "We will. But first, we need to gather enough evidence to expose him. We have to get this information into the right hands." Suddenly, a noise echoed from outside, the unmistakable sound of footsteps. My heart raced as I glanced at Jenna and Ben, fear mirrored in their eyes. "We're not alone," I whispered, my pulse quickening. We had to be ready. Whatever Voss had unleashed was still out there, and we were now deeper into its territory than ever before. The battle was far from over. The footsteps grew louder, echoing through the empty expanse of the warehouse. I held my breath, listening intently as the sound came closer. A cold sweat trickled down my spine, mixing with the adrenaline coursing through my veins. We had to remain silent, to blend into the darkness as best we could. Ben crouched low, his eyes darting around the dimly lit space. "What do we do if it's Voss's men?" he whispered, his voice tense. "We need to find a hiding spot," I replied, scanning the room for any possible refuge. My heart raced as I spotted a stack of old crates in the corner. "Over there. Quickly." We hurried toward the crates, ducking behind them just as the warehouse door creaked open. A figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the light spilling in from the street. My breath caught in my throat. The shape was familiar, but fear twisted in my gut. "Stay quiet," I hissed, pressing against the rough wood of the crates. My mind raced as I tried to identify the newcomer. The figure moved cautiously, scanning the room with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. As the figure stepped further into the shadows, I caught a glimpse of a face I recognized. It was Ethan, a former detective and someone I thought was long gone. He had been one of the few who believed in the corruption festering within the city. What was he doing here? "Ethan," I whispered, barely able to keep my voice steady. He stopped, turning toward the sound. "Who's there?" His voice was low, cautious. "It's me, Caleb," I called out, stepping out from behind the crates, raising my hands in surrender. Jenna and Ben followed suit, their expressions a mix of relief and confusion. Ethan's eyes widened as he recognized us. "Caleb, I thought you were dead," he said, his voice thick with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" "We're trying to stop Voss," I explained, urgency creeping into my voice. "We found some of his plans. He's experimenting with something he calls Project Shade, creating creatures for an army." Ethan's face paled, his expression shifting to one of grave concern. "This is worse than I feared." I had been tracking Voss for months, but every time I got close, I was forced to pull back. "His reach is deeper than anyone knows." "What do you mean?" Ben asked, stepping forward. "Is he connected to the recent disappearances in the city?" "Yes," Ethan replied, glancing at the shadows as if expecting someone to emerge at any moment. "People have been vanishing without a trace. The police are turning a blind eye, and Voss is behind it. He's not just corrupt, he's dangerous. He's playing with forces he can't control." Jenna's face was etched with worry. "What do we do now? We need proof to expose him." Ethan nodded, his brow furrowing in thought. "I have some intel I gathered before I went underground. If we can get to my safe house, I might have the evidence we need." I felt a flicker of hope. "Let's move quickly then. We can't stay here much longer." We moved quietly through the warehouse, every creak of the floorboards heightening our anxiety. The shadows felt alive, as if they were reaching out to ensnare us. I could almost hear the whispers of the past echoing in the dark corners, remnants of a time when this place was alive. As we reached the exit, Ethan paused, glancing back toward the entrance. "Wait," he whispered. "I think I hear something." The footsteps had returned, heavier this time. Panic surged through me. We had to get out now. Ethan led us through a narrow side door, which opened into a dark alley. The rain continued to pour, mixing with the dirt and grime of the city. We moved quickly, staying close to the walls, listening for any signs of pursuit. "How far is your safe house?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the rising tension. Just a few blocks away, Ethan replied, his voice low. But we need to be cautious. Voss's men are everywhere. We navigated through the maze of alleyways, the city feeling more like a labyrinth of shadows than a home. The rain soaked through our clothes, chilling me to the bone, but I pushed forward, fueled by determination. As we rounded a corner, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned just in time to see a shadow dart behind a dumpster. My pulse quickened. "Did you see that?" I whispered urgently. "What?" Jenna asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "I think someone is following us," I replied, scanning the darkness. "We need to pick up the pace." Ethan nodded and we broke into a run, the sound of our footsteps echoing off the damp pavement. I could feel the weight of eyes on us, the sensation of being hunted sharpening my senses. The shadows danced around us, but I kept my focus on the path ahead. We reached a seemingly abandoned building, its entrance partially obscured by overgrown vines. Ethan led us inside, quickly closing the door behind us. The dim light filtering through the cracked windows revealed a small, cluttered space, filled with boxes and old furniture. "This is it," Ethan said, moving toward a hidden panel in the wall. He pulled it open, revealing a small compartment filled with files and documents. "This is the evidence I gathered." Jenna and Ben crowded around as Ethan sifted through the papers. I took a moment to catch my breath, my heart still racing from the adrenaline. The realization of how close we had come to being caught sent a chill through me. "Here," Ethan said, pulling out a folder labeled Project Shade. "This is what we need." He opened the folder, revealing photos and documents that detailed Voss's experiments. The images were horrifying, creatures in various stages of development, notes scribbled in haste about their capabilities and potential uses. My stomach turned at the sight. "This is proof," I said, feeling a mix of horror and determination. "We need to get this to the authorities." But just as we were about to discuss our next move, a loud bang echoed through the building. The sound reverberated in the silence, making my heart drop. "They've found us," I hissed, panic flooding my veins. "We have to hide," Ethan urged, shoving the folder back into the compartment and sealing it shut. "Quickly!" We scrambled behind a large stack of boxes, our hearts pounding in sync with the rapid footsteps approaching the door. The shadows seemed to stretch further, encroaching on our makeshift hiding spot. The door burst open, revealing two figures, men dressed in dark clothing, faces obscured by hoods. Their presence was menacing, a stark reminder of the danger we faced. "Search the place," one of them barked, stepping inside with a predatory intensity. "They can't have gone far." I held my breath, every muscle in my body tensed as the men began to search the room. I could see Jenna's eyes wide with fear, her hand gripping Ben's tightly. The tension hung thick in the air as the intruders moved closer. I could hear the sound of their footsteps, the scraping of metal against wood. It was a race against time, and our survival depended on our silence. Then one of the men approached the stack of boxes we were hiding behind. My heart stopped as I watched him lean closer, searching for any sign of us. "Check behind here," he said, his voice low but firm. I could feel the walls closing in, a sense of impending doom settling over us. Would we be caught? Would our fight to expose Voss end here in this dark, forgotten place? Just then, a loud crash erupted from outside, the sound of shattering glass echoing through the building. The men turned their attention away, exchanging glances filled with confusion. "Go check it out," the second man ordered. "I'll stay here and make sure they don't escape." The first man nodded, rushing out the door. I exhaled slowly, my heart still racing, as I realized we had been given a brief reprieve. "Now's our chance," I whispered urgently. "We need to move while we still can." Ethan nodded, and we quickly emerged from our hiding spot. We couldn't waste any time, every moment counted. We made our way toward the exit, staying as quiet as possible, our senses heightened. Just as we reached the door, I glanced back to see the remaining man still searching the room, oblivious to our presence. We slipped out into the night, the rain washing over us like a cleansing wave. We hurried down the alley, our breath visible in the cool air, the shadows flickering around us. As we turned the corner, I felt a mix of relief and urgency. We had to get the evidence to safety and expose Voss's operation before it was too late. With every step, I could sense the danger lurking just out of sight. The fight was far from over, and the city still lay ahead, filled with secrets waiting to be uncovered. You made it to the end of the stories. That means it's the perfect time to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you haven't already, leave a like and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great time relaxing, and good night.